Hello, our topic for today is medical marijuana, and our speakers are Elizabeth, Miriam, Lisa, and Paige.
So I think before we segue into, the recent history of medical marijuana policy and legislation, it's important for us to let you know what this actual podcast is going to be about. And so today's talk will be on the recent history of medical marijuana policy and legislation, how various states' medical marijuana laws work, critique the thinking of medical marijuana policies, explore the influence of cannabis on neurological functioning and development when use is initiated at various stages of development, and then how does that influence your critique and conceptualization of medical marijuana laws? And also, finally, we'll talk about the impact of legalization on people who have been in court involved for marijuana-related crimes.
Before we continue, we would like to show a short video on the history of medical marijuana. Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and I will be talking about the Illinois medical marijuana policy and legislation. On May 31st, 2019, the Illinois House approved, with a vote of 66 to 47, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which legalizes marijuana. This makes Illinois the 11th state to legalize marijuana for adults and the first to approve legal sales. Now, starting January the 1st, 2020, adults 21 or older could possess cannabis and purchase cannabis products in licensed stores. Now, there is a limitation on possession, such as you could have either 30 grams of raw cannabis or cannabis-infused products containing no more than 500 milligrams of THC, which is a psychoactive compound in marijuana. Now, this compound produces the high feeling when marijuana is either smoked or is eaten in foods. Or you can have 5 grams of cannabis product in concentrated form. Now, there is also a component for non-residents. The non-residents can purchase half the amount of the residents, which means you can only have 15 grams of cannabis, 250 milligrams of THC in cannabis-infused products, and 2.5 grams concentrated cannabis product. Now we're going to take a look at other states in reference to the medical marijuana law. Let's take a look at Nevada. Nevada states that an individual must register as a medical marijuana patient, and his or her doctor must certify that individual and clarify that the patient is suffering from 1 or 3 conditions. The conditions range from AIDS, cancer, glaucoma, PTSD, seizures, severe nausea, and severe pain. The patient can purchase marijuana from a registered marijuana dispensary or a registered caregiver, or they can grow their own if they live more than 25 miles from an operating medical marijuana dispensary. Let's take a look at Florida. Of course, the patient must register and also must be suffering from 1 or more conditions. Pretty much the same list as Nevada. However, Florida also has Crohn's disease, Parkinson's disease, and terminal condition that must be diagnosed by their doctor. Also, Florida has that the patient can purchase marijuana from a registered marijuana dispensary. Their dispensaries are called medical marijuana treatment centers. Now, let's take a look at Rhode Island. Pretty much the same conditions, that the patient must register and have 1 or more conditions. The lists look the same as Nevada and Florida. However, Rhode Island also lists hepatitis C. With Rhode Island, once registered, the patient is permitted to cultivate up to 12 immature, non-flowering marijuana plants and up to 12 mature flowering marijuana plants. Each plant must be valid with a tag issued by Department of Business. The patient can also purchase marijuana products from 3 states' licensed dispensary. Now keep in mind, not all states welcome the marijuana law, such as Mississippi. The first offense, possession of 30 grams or more, is punishable by $250 fine instead of jail. However, let's take a look at Arkansas. Now, they had little or no interest in changing their law or legalizing marijuana, despite the increased interest from around the country. Their law states possessing less than 4 ounces of marijuana is a misdemeanor, carrying up to 1 year in jail and fine up to $2,500. Possessing an ounce of marijuana or more, and who has 2 other convictions of possession, is now a felony, punishable up to 6 years. That's right, 6 years in prison. But check this out. The fine is up to $6,000. Now that is pretty steep. Arkansas is listed as the harshest law in the nation when it comes to marijuana.
Hello, this is Miriam, and I'm going to be talking about critique thinking of medical marijuana policies. So as of right now, the DEA, or Drug Enforcement Agency, has considered marijuana an illegal Schedule I drug. So what that means is that there is a high potential of abuse with this substance, and that it has not been accepted for its medical use. And while there are people who might disregard it or might be against medical marijuana, there has been medicinal effects that have been proven with various populations. So from cancer patients who are using this because of the nausea and vomiting they're experiencing from chemotherapy, to individuals with Parkinson's with their hand tremors. There are so many different benefits with medical marijuana, and the medicinal effects have been proven. And so the second part about critique thinking of medical marijuana policies is that when marijuana is actually legalized, or even just discussions of legalization, there's a lot of questions that are raised. And one of I think like actually one of the conversations that I hear commonly is, okay, let's say marijuana is legalized. What's going to happen in criminal records of those incarcerated? So there are individuals right now who are in prison for marijuana possessions. What's going to happen to them in their criminal records? The other discussion that, the other questions that are raised is, how severe would a medical condition need to be for an individual to actually receive marijuana for medical use? Like, would there be certain restrictions? Are there only certain medical conditions that are covered under this? And kind of, segueing from that is thinking about, will this ever be considered a Schedule II drug? Because as we discussed previously, a Schedule I drug is actually its medicinal effects are actually disregarded in some sense. And with the Schedule II is that it's going to be prescribed, but of course it is closely monitored because of the chances of, substance abuse with this substance. And so that does make people wonder, is this ever going to be considered a Schedule II drug? And now kind of going off of that, when we think about legalization, is what strains are actually going to be covered under these new policies? Because there's not just one type of marijuana. I mean, there's multiple strains. And so that raises questions as to what strain is going to be covered or how many are going to fall under these new policies.
Hello there, my name is Paige Swan. I'm here to talk about marijuana laws and the impact that it's been having on youth. I found an empirical study conducted by 3 researchers who examined the association between the amount of medical marijuana patients, growers, per 1,000 population in 32 Oregon counties from the years 2006 to 2015. And they looked at the usage of marijuana among adolescents during this time period. So the goal was to see if the increase of medical marijuana patients and an increase in growers resulted in an increase in adolescent use of marijuana. Results did show that the mean rate of marijuana per 1,000 population increased from 2.9 in 2006 to 18.3 persons in 2015. In addition, the grower rate mean increased from 3.8 to 11.9. This shows that, coinciding with the increase in growers and patients, and then the study stated that parental disapproval had gone down during this time frame because marijuana is being more widely accepted. So that also played into an increase in adolescent usage of the marijuana in Oregon. All right, looking at the impacts of marijuana on the prenatal brain. So, according to a study I found, marijuana use during pregnancy occurs in about 5% of the population. This exposure can alter the endocannabinoid signaling pathways and can weaken the fetal neural architecture, which can result in neurobehavioral and cognitive impairments in the long run. In addition, with the weakening of the fetal neuronal architecture, when THC binds to cannabinoid 1 receptors during pregnancy, it can alter central dopamine and opioid transmitter system development, which regulates reward and motivation. This exposure can lead to an increased vulnerability for future drug use. Um, in addition, in utero exposure to THC might lead to fetal growth restriction, increased startle reflexes, tremors, impaired memory, and visual motor discoordination later in life. Therefore, marijuana exposure during pregnancy can have long-lasting effects on the child's brain. Okay, moving on from the unborn brain to the adolescent brain. So during adolescence, the teenager's brain is filled with cannabinoid receptors. It is just packed full of them. Uh, Long-term use of marijuana can disrupt the white matter connectivity in the brain. When THC stimulates the high concentration of the cannabinoid receptors, the various parts of the brain are affected, which in turn affect different areas of functioning. So when there is a high concentration of CB1 receptors in the hippocampus, memory and learning can be affected. When there's a high concentration in THC in the amygdala, there can be a reduction in anxiety. An individual may experience an increased appetite, and they may forget bad experiences that they've had. Marijuana is sometimes used as an escape. And then in the basal ganglia, it can reduce spontaneous motor activity. In the frontal cortex, high concentrations alter executive functions. And then in the ventral tegmental area, usage can ultimately lead to marijuana dependence later on in life. Usage also affects the cingulofrontoparietal cognitive attention network. This is important because this network is responsible for executive control, inhibition, attention, and decision making. Therefore, as the research shows, marijuana usage during adolescence can impact several parts of the brain that are responsive for cognitive memory and white matter within the brain. It's really important to note that this is just such a susceptible time for adolescents because their brain is still developing. So then any alteration by marijuana can be lasting. And here is a video on the impact of marijuana in adolescents as legalization becomes increased within the United States. It's important to see how it is impacting the youth, how when media gets a hold of it, what's it going to look like in society. So I found this video to be very educational and to be very relevant to the conversation we're having today.
This is Lisa, and I'm going to talk about the impact of legalization on people who have been court involved for marijuana-related crimes. Some individuals believe that there will be a negative impact if marijuana is legalized. Some negative impacts can include greater use of the drug and a lead to increase in crime. One concern of the legalization of marijuana will be the greater use of the drug. Some individuals believe that by legalizing marijuana, the drug will be used more. Marijuana, despite its criminalization, is widely used already. According to NORML.org, marijuana follows a more occasional use pattern, once a week or once a month. Since marijuana is at best low risk to addiction and the most users will wean themselves off the drug, it's unlikely that making it more available would have a significant increase on these well-established patterns. According to NORML.org, if one looks at selected studies on jurisdictions that have decriminalized the drug, the evidence is either no increase or a slight increase amongst those segments most likely to use the drug. Another concern is the increase in crime if marijuana is legalized. With the increase of crime, there would be an increase in the need of criminal justice. According to NORM.org, there is little evidence of a direct link between marijuana use and criminal behavior. David Boyum and Mark Kleeman, in their review of drugs, note that marijuana is the least likely drug to generate criminal activities. This is due to the method of dealing, amount of drug required to get high, and the fact that high itself is highly unlikely to trigger violence. Other individuals believe that legalizing marijuana will have a positive impact on the nation. The positive impact would include saving money, earning money, and a lower arrest rate. By legalizing marijuana, the nation would be saving money in many different areas. This would include police enforcement, laws, and courts. By not reinforcing marijuana crimes, there would be money saved for other crimes. The Drug Alliance states that there were at least $47 billion spent annually in the U.S. on the war drug. By legalizing marijuana, many states have and will profit in tax revenue. Colorado and Washington already have shown increases. Colorado earned $135 million in 2015, and most of that money is going to schools. Washington has earned $70 million in revenues in just the first year of sales. If marijuana crimes were not labeled as crimes, then there would be a lower arrest rate for the U.S. The Criminal Justice Policy Foundation states that there are 700,000 arrests each year for cannabis violations, and almost 90% of those are possession. There are many different penalties for marijuana-related crimes, and the penalties can vary. Depending on the amount of marijuana an individual has, the penalties could become more severe. For an individual, one penalty of marijuana are fines. Marijuana fines are less harsh than being arrested or having to serve time in jail, but could be inconvenient and expensive for the individual. Each state fines are different. Before decriminalization, New Hampshire used to have a fine up to $2,000, and after decriminalization, the fines were just $100 for a first or second offense. Some states have had a fine up to $5,000 though. Another penalty for marijuana-related crimes would be someone getting arrested or jail time. Getting arrested or serving jail time depends on how much marijuana an individual has. Getting arrested and jail time can cause an individual to lose their job, which can ultimately lead them to losing their housing. Having to go to court or classes could also be expensive for the individual. One of the biggest penalties for marijuana-related crimes are permanent criminal records. A criminal record is information that is kept about a person's arrests and convictions that others can investigate. Permanent criminal records can be on an individual's record for life. With a lifelong record, an individual might lose out on opportunities for employment and loans. The impact of legalization on individuals who have been court-involved for marijuana-related crimes can be expunged. Expungement is the official sealing of an individual's record of arrest and conviction. This must be done by a court of law and serves the purpose of making such records unavailable to people doing a background check. Because most employers and many landlords commonly ask applicants if they have a criminal record, and they may not hire or rent to someone with a criminal past. The process of expungement has become more popular. Having a record expunged could really change a person's life. Even though sealing records is an option, not every state follows the same expungement law. Some state requires a waiting period before a record could be expunged. An expungement can usually only occur if there were no other criminal records attached to the possession. In the past 4 years, at least 10 states have passed laws addressing expungement of certain marijuana convictions. In 2018, Alaska, California, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, Washington, and Colorado consider legislations that would affect expungement of certain marijuana convictions. California measures was the only one that passed. Massachusetts allows the sealing of records for offenses that are no longer crimes. Therefore, a past criminal case for possession of marijuana under 2 ounces can be sealed without a waiting period. New Hampshire amended 2 years the waiting period for petitioning for annulment of a misdemeanor marijuana or a harsh offense. Colorado now allows defendants convicted of misdemeanor offenses for use or possession of marijuana to petition to seal criminal records if offense would not have been a crime if committed on or after December 10, 2012.
This slide includes our first page of references. This slide includes our second page of references.